Everyone's quoting Alan Watts lately. Scroll through YouTube, and you'll see his name glowing under every thumbnail. Same fonts, same voice, same recycled transcendence. But here's the paradox. The man who spent his life saying, "Think for yourself," has become the poster child of copy-paste spirituality. Alan Watts didn't want disciples. He wanted thinkers. He wanted people brave, enough to face the chaos of existence without clinging to borrowed certainty. Yet the digital age took his voice, sliced it into clips, sprinkled it with ambient music, and turned it into background noise for the anxious generation. Beautiful noise maybe, but still noise. We live in a time where awakening became an algorithm, where enlightenment competes with ads, where a soul search becomes SEO. And so the question is, are we truly awakening, or are we just echoing the ones who did? See, there's something they don't tell you about Alan Watts. He wasn't born enlightened. He wasn't some mystical guru sitting under a digital tree. He was a man obsessed with learning. He devoured theology, psychology, Zen, Taoism, Vedanta, and even quantum physics before those words went viral. He built his wisdom through curiosity, not imitation. His awakening was not a formula, it was a rebellion. But today, we mistake repetition for resonance. We think enlightenment is found by replaying the same quote, instead of experiencing what it means. We hide behind the words of awakened minds, because it's safer than daring to awaken ourselves. It's easier to follow than to feel, easier to copy than to confront, easier to repeat, "You are the universe," than to live as one. The irony? Alan Watts would laugh at all of this, and probably pour himself a drink while doing it. He warned us about the danger of mistaking the map for the territory. And that's exactly what we've done. We took his maps, his metaphors, his poetry, his voice, and forgot to walk the actual path. Maybe you felt it too. That fatigue that hits when every spiritual awakening video sounds the same script, the same tone, the same detached calm pretending to be depth. It's not your cynicism speaking, it's your intelligence begging for authenticity. Because real awakening isn't peaceful, it's uncomfortable. It shakes your beliefs, burns your illusions, exposes your fears, and then asks you to dance in the ashes. That's what Alan Watts did. He dared to dance where others preached. He bridged East and West not to sell a product, but to prove that truth has no nationality. And if he were alive today, he'd probably say, "Stop quoting me, start questioning everything." We don't need another Alan Watts. We need the spirit that made Alan Watts possible. The courage to think, to feel, to question, to create. Because the real revolution isn't in repeating the words of the awakened. It's in discovering your own. So this is not a video about him. It's a mirror held up to you. If you've ever felt like something's off, like all this talk about awakening started sounding mechanical, you're not wrong. The world is saturated with borrowed wisdom, and it's starving for living thought. Alan Watts said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself." But if all apertures look the same, the universe stops learning something new. You were never meant to copy the light. You were meant to refract it. So here's the truth they don't tell you. Alan Watts isn't a man to follow. He's a signal to decode. A vibration that once said, "Awakening is not about finding answers. It's about living the questions." And the only way to honor him now is to stop mimicking the voice of his wisdom and start discovering the sound of your own. Because when the world stops copying, it finally starts creating again. Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." And yet, we built a culture that fears movement, a generation that wants awakening prepackaged. 10 steps, 1 guru, 0 risk. We repeat what worked for others, hoping it will open the same door for us. But every soul has a different lock. That's what they don't tell you about enlightenment. It's not collective approval, it's personal discovery. It's messy, contradictory, human. The truth is, Alan Watts didn't wake up because he copied anyone. He woke up because he dared to question everything he was told, even the sacred. He questioned religion, science, himself. He questioned the very idea of a self. And that's where awakening really begins. Not in silence, but in curiosity. Not in repetition, but in rebellion. We are drowning in borrowed wisdom. Every scroll gives us someone else's truth, polished and filtered for engagement. But information is not transformation. Transformation is what happens when information passes through the fire of your own experience. It's what burns false certainty and leaves behind something unmistakably yours. That's the part the algorithm can't teach you. Because no matter how advanced it becomes, it will never taste doubt the way you do. It will never feel the tremor that precedes real change. You see, Awakening isn't about following the brightest voice in the room. It's about learning to listen to the quiet one inside your chest, the one that whispers when you finally stop consuming and start being. And that's why thinking is sacred, because thought is not just analysis, it's creation. It's how consciousness learns to see itself. When you think, really think, not to be right, not to win, not to perform, but to understand, you're doing the very thing Alan Watts spent his life defending. You're keeping the mind alive. We forgot how radical that is. We forgot that to think freely is to be revolutionary. Because in a world addicted to sameness, originality becomes rebellion. And rebellion, the good kind, isn't chaos. It's the soul refusing to be automated. Maybe that's why so many of us feel restless, because somewhere deep down, we know the difference between reflection and repetition. We can sense when something has life in it, and when it's just playback. So if you've ever felt that quiet discomfort, that feeling that says, there must be more than this, you're not broken. You're awake. You're feeling the friction between who you are and who the world told you to be. Alan Watts didn't just study the East. He lived in the tension between East and West, between intellect and intuition, logic and surrender. He believed that truth lives in paradox, that it's both reason and rhythm. That's what made him timeless. Not his quotes, his honesty, not his voice, his vision. And that's exactly what's missing today. We trade originality for optimization. We fear stillness because it's not productive. We fear depth because it can't be monetized. But real awakening doesn't fit inside productivity. It doesn't follow metrics. It grows in silence. It breathes in solitude. It expands in the spaces no one sees. So if you're feeling unseen, good. You're not supposed to be trending. You're supposed to be transforming. Let Alan Watts remind you of what he actually meant to say. Not believe me, but believe in what you discover. Not follow the enlightened, but follow the light within. Because awakening is not about escaping the world. It's about seeing it clearly for the first time. It's about realizing that your consciousness is not a spectator. It's the stage, the play, the actor, the pause. And maybe, just maybe, that's what he wanted all along. For you to stop quoting him and start embodying what he was pointing to. The living, breathing miracle of awareness itself. So the next time you hear his voice echoing through another recycled clip, remember, he's not asking you to listen to him. He's asking you to listen to yourself. Because what they didn't tell you about Alan Watts is that his greatest message was never, I am awakened. It was always, you are. Alan Watts never promised peace. He promised perspective. And maybe that's the one thing our world forgot to keep. We turned wisdom into wallpaper. Beautiful, yes, but flat. We quote what we don't live. We repeat what we don't feel. And we call that awakening. But Watts knew better. He knew that truth is a moving current. Not a crystal you hang on your neck to look spiritual. He knew that to see clearly is to be changed. And that change is not comfortable. So when you hear his voice echoing through another video, remember it isn't nostalgia. It's a reminder. A vibration whispering, wake up again. Because awakening isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice every day. Each time you question what you've been told. Each time you refuse to numb your wonder. Look around. We built a civilization that confuses intelligence with imitation. We reward speed over depth, visibility over truth. And yet, under all the noise, there's a quiet ache. The soul of the species, longing for something real. That's where you come in. Alan Watts was never meant to be a finish line. He was meant to be a door. And you, yes, you are the next room. Maybe your awakening won't sound like his. Maybe it will sound like laughter, or silence, or a tear falling while you finally admit, I don't know who I am yet. That's okay. That's where life begins. Because the awakened ones are not perfect. They're present. They make mistakes, then study them like sacred texts. They fall in love with the question mark. And somehow through that love, they start to glow. The glow is not enlightenment, it's honesty. Alan Watts understood that everything sacred is also ordinary. Breathing, walking, washing dishes, laughing at your own confusion. He taught that when you stop trying to be spiritual, you start being real. And being real is the most spiritual thing you can do. So what does the world need now? Not more preachers of awakening, creators of consciousness, people who build, speak, write, sing, design, question, not to impress, but to express, to show that awareness has texture, that thought can dance, that love can be intelligent, and intelligence can be kind. Every time you think for yourself, the universe expands a little. Every time you tell your truth, another star flickers on somewhere. You don't have to be famous. You just have to be fully here. That's how you change the field, one authentic frequency at a time. Alan Watts once warned that trying to define yourself is like biting your own teeth. Maybe that's the point. You were never supposed to define yourself. You were meant to experience yourself, to taste the flavor of existence through curiosity, to feel how vast you really are when you stop performing and start perceiving. And when you finally realize that no quote, no guru, no video can replace your own insight, you become dangerous in the best way. Untamed, unborrowed, unmistakably alive. So think, question, create, fail, rise, laugh, contradict yourself. Do it all consciously, because consciousness isn't the absence of contradiction, it's the awareness of it. Be the human that algorithms can't predict. Be the voice that doesn't fit the mold. Be the frequency that reminds others they're more than repetition. That's how you honor Alan Watts, not by sounding like him, by remembering why he sounded like himself. He was alive in thought, alive in wonder, alive in the constant realization that everything, even confusion, was divine play. So play, not because life is easy, but because it's sacred. Play with awareness, play with courage, play with your own becoming. And when someone asks what awakening looks like, show them your laughter, your stillness, your clarity, your refusal to copy. Because the truth is simple. The world doesn't need another Alan Watts. The world needs a million awakened yous, each one daring to see differently, to think independently, to love intelligently, to be fully awake. So stop quoting enlightenment. Start embodying it. Stop waiting for permission. You are the permission. The world doesn't need another teacher. The world needs you, awake, thinking, alive. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. This is Human Wave, where awakened minds rise into a life of wholeness and fulfillment.